The outbreak of COVID-19 has had an extraordinary impact on the global economy and triggered widespread social upheaval. Worldwide, clients, investors, analysts, market watchers, and citizens are grappling with uncertainty and in need of insight to guide their decision-making. Starting this week, the Aga Khan Economic Planning Board for the United Kingdom is launching a series of pre-recorded webinars, Managing Through Disruption. Designed to help answer the questions that matter, we discuss the impact that COVID-19 has had on Jamaati businesses, self-employed, and landlords. Jamaati members share their experiences and their unique perspectives on the outbreak's effects and how they are repositioning their businesses for the future. These recordings are available on the.ismaili. You are watching Managing Through Disruption, Impact on Self-Employed Professionals. On the panel, we have Rahima Valji, Business Growth and Innovation Advisor to CEOs and leadership teams. Sohail Ratansi, Director of a consultancy specializing in IT security-related projects across various industries. This session is moderated by Salim Damani, EPB board member responsible for business case management.
The UK government is spending billions of pounds to support businesses, subsidize employee wages, and help the self-employed workers cope with the financial shock of coronavirus. However, millions of workers, including up to 2 million self-employed individuals, will fall through the cracks of various support schemes. In this webinar, we'll try and address concerns raised by our Jamaati members who are self-employed. We have summarized those concerns and prepared a list of key questions. Rahima and Sohail will go through the questions, and I'll try my level best to provide guidance so that the Jamaati members can benefit from various schemes available out there. Over to you, Rahima and Sohail.
Great. Thank you very much, Salim. So I understand that the Chancellor has announced some incredible benefits for the self-employed. I'm a little confused if whether or not I can actually avail of those benefits. So my situation is I think I'm self-employed. I run my own business. So I'm a director of a limited company, and I provide management and advisory services to companies under growth and innovation. My business at the moment, because of what's happening in the market, my projects have stopped. And so the business is stalled, and I'm a little confused as to what government support I can apply for.
I think this is misconception. A lot of people who consider themselves as self-employed are not quite self-employed simply because they work through their own company and they are on the company's PAY scheme. If you are on the payroll of your limited company, then you are not self-employed. The other distinction is whether you completed the employment or self-employed pages of your tax return. If you completed the employment parts of the tax return, then you are an employee, not self-employed. Okay. As a result, you cannot benefit from the government's self-employed income support scheme announced by the Chancellor.
So effectively, I'm an employee of my own company.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay.
So would that mean that the only benefit then available would be either the universal credit, or maybe if I'm a director, I can then furlough myself and claim the, I think it's at £2,500 a month top end?
Now, the issue with that is, can a director furlough himself? And it's a very tricky and gray area, actually. As a director of a limited company, you have a fiduciary duty, and the key objective is to promote your company's business success. If you furlough yourself, then who is going to run the company? Right. However, if your company's business activities have come to a grinding halt, and there aren't any activities, you don't have any projects to work on, then you can easily furlough yourself and claim the job retention scheme announced by the government for employees. Now, most directors of a limited company tend to pay out a little salary and the rest in dividends. If the salary part of your income is lower, then you can only claim 80% of that segment, actually. For argument's sake, if one was taking out £1,000 as a nominal salary, you can only claim up to 80% of that £1,000 a month. Whereas you might be sort of taking out £100,000 in dividends. So your claim to those benefits is very restricted, unfortunately.
And how do I actually, this idea of furloughing is interesting. So what do I need to do? Is there a form that I fill out? Do I call my accountant? I heard something about a portal.
Okay, so yes, good question.
What do we actually do?
So the company, the employer has to issue a furlough letter to all its employees. Those who have been assigned to be furloughed have to be issued a letter. And the employers have to seek employees' consent. The reason being that if, for God forbid, anything were to happen and the employee could turn around and would say, well, I didn't agree to the terms or the revised terms of their employment, then the employer is quite exposed, actually. So it is from the compliance point of view, it is very important to make sure that that correspondence, that agreement is in place. In addition to that, the Inland Revenue are more than likely to visit and inspect records maintained by the companies who are claiming grants under the job retention scheme. So I think you have to have the paperwork in place. So does it sort of answer your question?
Yeah, but how do I actually do that? So
yes, sorry, coming back to so, okay, so the revenue is not ready yet. They are actually carrying out some beta testing, and the portal will be ready for employers to use around the 20th of April.
Got it. Okay.
They will have to sort of upload employee details onto the HM Revenue and Customs portal and enter all the details, they pay, and the personnel details, actually. So,
and so if it's not going to be ready until another week or two, from when can I effectively furlough myself? Should I have given myself that letter already? Do I retroactively do it?
You can do that. Now, this is something which raised by a lot of employers, actually.
Yeah.
First of all, they will have to continue paying their employees. The grants from the government will not come through until end of May, June this year. So they will have to fund the payroll costs until then. So yes, your company will have to pay you until the government releases the grants.
And am I furloughed from the day that I or my accountant submits the application? Let's say if it's the first day on April the 20th, or can I be furloughed earlier?
You can be furloughed earlier.
Great.
It depends when your business's activities, came to a halt.
Got it.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have another one. You mentioned something about job retention scheme. I've been doing a little bit of reading, and I understand, and this is, Sohail, you had asked about this as well, but you've got the universal credit,
yep.
Which I understand is all of the benefits rolled into one if you're eligible for housing, etc. And then you've got this job retention scheme. And then there's something that the Chancellor has announced, that's the new style employment scheme, I think it's called, or employment support scheme. Am I eligible for any of those in addition to furloughing?
Okay, so I hope you're not talking about self-employed income support scheme, are you? Or you're talking about universal credit?
I don't know, actually. It's all very confusing to me.
Okay, right. If you furlough yourself, and depending upon your salary, how much you've been drawing your salary through your limited company, if the salary is quite less and below the threshold, then you can apply for universal credit as well. So I think the guidance from the governments and from HM Revenue and Customs is not quite clear, actually. but they agree on one point, that you can actually claim for universal credit at the same time as job retention scheme or any other benefit you might be, or self-employed income support scheme. You can continue claiming.
Okay.
Okay.
And that's just all on their website, the gov.uk?
Yes. Now, for the job retention scheme, as I mentioned earlier, your company will have to furlough you.
Okay.
And they'll have to then go onto the HM Revenue and Customs portal to submit the claim.
When that's ready.
When that's ready. For the universal credit, you will have to apply. You'll have to go onto the government's website and complete the universal credit application form online. It's fairly straightforward, although it can be slightly tricky in the sense that it asks for a number of questions about your income levels, about your savings, whether you have any savings, about your partner's income savings, etc., your dependents. So I think once you go through the application process, the revenue will then decide how much you are eligible for.
Got it.
Okay.
I understand that they have, so that generally for universal credit, if you have £16,000 in savings or more,
Yes.
you qualify. I've heard something that they are no longer considering that, or that threshold has been reduced to 6,000. Do you know anything about that? Okay,
no, the threshold still remains at £16,000 as far as I'm aware. The government have not changed that as yet. The 16,000 threshold stays as it is as we speak. Yeah, so there's no change as such.
Okay. I was wondering how I can pay my salary after being furloughed if my company doesn't have any money. And there's that period of time before we can start claiming that back, basically.
Okay. Assuming you have a bank account, you've been banking with a local high street, bank, you can actually apply for coronavirus business interruption loan. And that loan is interest-free for up to 12 months.
Okay.
Provided you can, produce your set of accounts over the past 2 to 3 years. You can show them your trading activity, and also you explain to your bank, why do you need this loan? You also have to demonstrate that, yes, your business has been impacted by coronavirus. Your business activities have been impacted, come to a halt, and the banks will, be very sort of understanding and accommodating, provided you have a reasonable track record with them.
Okay.
And you also will have to demonstrate how you'll be able to service the loan once the pandemic is over. How are you going to what sort of time scale you require to repay the loan?
Sure. And
you have to be very sensible in your demand for the loan, actually. So it has to be something which you can sort of justify. You need, 10, 20, 30,000 pounds rather than 150,000 pounds for thereabouts.
Okay.
So that you are able to sort of tide over the pandemic. A number of banks were asking for personal guarantees. They have backed off now, following the government's tough stance on on that particular point. So the banks are not asking for personal guarantees for loans up to £250,000.
So who's guaranteeing them then?
So the government is.
Somebody could potentially apply for this loan, knowing that it's being guaranteed by the government. And if their business fails to come back alive or take off again once the economy opens, they can just shut their business.
No, it won't happen, actually. I'll tell you the reason why. The banks are not going to lend left, right, center. They've been very careful, actually. They're also mindful of the fact that the recession is looming. It's just, down the road. So they are not going to lend very easily. They are going to ask you lots of questions, actually. And that is the reason why, as mentioned to Sohail earlier, whenever you apply for a business interruption loan, you've got to be very sensible. You have to come up with the answer. You have to come up with a plan as to what or how you're going to use the funds to survive this pandemic. You can ask for reasonable amounts. And if the banks can see that you are borrowing more than you need, they will not lend you.
Right, but let's say that amount is 10, 20 grand, you need it for, I don't know, marketing, or you want to develop a new product, or whatever it is. There is this is my sort of sinister mind in that they're obviously going to try and block this off, but there will be those people that will look this as a way to get money. And if they're going to shut down their company, the government ends up being a creditor, which just won't claim.
Agree. There will be a minority of individuals who might sort of try and abuse the system, actually. Yes, you're quite right there. You have to provide your accounts for up to last 2 to 3 years. You have to provide your management accounts. You have to provide your cash flow forecast. You have to spell out how you're going to sort of use the funds, how are you going to sort of repay the loans. So they are quite, quite stringent in their sort of lending criteria.
Are you allowed to use those loans as a way of sort of survival? Let's say that this lockdown or this coma that the economy is in continues for more than 60 to 90 days, and your cash reserves in your business account are used up because you have been drawing dividends to survive, then can you apply for a loan that is basically to keep the directors afloat?
I think you can apply for a loan to pay your staff wages. You have to pay for your overheads, etc.
Yeah.
But I think the banks would be very strict when you say to the bank that I would like to pay myself a dividend of X amount.
Yeah. No, of course.
So I think they will, and again, if you send them a proposal saying you will be spending money on your marketing, you've got to be very careful, because if you are furloughed, then you can't be sort of dealing with this sort of activity.
That's the other thing, yeah.
That's the other thing. So you've got to find right balance as to what you do in the coming weeks and months. You've got to be very, very careful, actually. So if you get involved with dealing with the bank, then you are not quite furloughed. You are working.
Yeah. So my situation, in 3 months, my liquidity, if I don't get another contract in, I'm going to have to apply for a job or figure something else out. So my situation, if I furlough myself, I can't apply for this loan to survive, right? So I either have to forego the furloughing free money from the government, which, given that most directors pay themselves the minimum amount of salary of £720, so 80% of that is about 575, 600 tops, without having done the maths, I would need to give that up in order to be able to potentially apply for this loan from the government from a liquidity perspective. So it doesn't feel like we have a lot of room to maneuver.
I think you should speak to your bank as soon as possible.
Okay.
No harm in speaking with them and finding out whether they can actually entertain your application.
You don't actually have to, let's say things pick up or you get another contract. If you don't want to access it or pay it back quicker, you can also do that. So it's more sort of like a plan B.
Yes, agree.
Okay. And one other thing, when you're on, let's say we furlough ourselves, can we continue to draw dividends to make up the shortfall, or how does that work?
I would not suggest that, actually, to be honest.
Okay.
But then again, see, are you going to apply for a bank loan as well, business interruption loan? If you are, then you shouldn't be using the loan to pay the dividends.
A lot of IT contractors especially are or were outside of the IR35 that's now been suspended.
Right.
But early on in the year or towards the end of last year, a lot of them were forced to become inside IR35 theoretically and pay PAYE and NI and so on and so forth. Are they eligible to claim the furlough, or are they, in a situation where they're regarded as directors and they still can't do it because their business, limited company might have actually shut down or gone into hibernation, let's say?
My personal view on that is that they should be able to be furloughed, actually, because if they are part of an umbrella company, surely all the admin work would be carried out by the administrators of an umbrella company. Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay. So as a result, because there's no business activity, there's no revenue stream coming through, the directors of umbrella company can furlough their employees.
Sure. Okay, that makes sense.
So I have a question around furloughing. So clearly, as you mentioned, and very, very clear about the fact that we can't do any work, does that also apply if I continue to look for projects, or I'm making pitches, or I'm engaging in conversations to see what might be available, or if companies are looking to engage again once this once the business activity in the economy opens up again? Is that considered work?
It can be classified. It depends upon which way you look at it, actually. One school of thought would say, well, this is not a revenue generation as we speak.
Yeah.
You are sort of planning ahead into the future, into say 6 months down the line, etc. The other school of thought might say, well, you are supposed to stay at home, for argument's sake. You don't have any work, you don't get involved in any business activity. So you just simply stay put, don't do anything. But then again, by sitting at home, if you are sort of exploring, reading articles or looking at ways how you sort of come out of this pandemic or the crisis, then that should be fine. But as far as the company is concerned, you should be furloughed, meaning you do not do any activity whatsoever. But if you're in your personal capacity, if you were to do any work, I'm sure that should not be a problem. That is my take on that, actually.
Got it.
So for example, you could be reading a financial newspaper, or you could be reading a history book. But if you were sort of reading how to sort of come out of this crisis and how to manage, or how to sort of make the most out of the pandemic or the recovery, then I think that should be fine. That should be fine. But as long as it is not linked with the revenue generation of your company, that's the bottom line.
So I know that the government schemes are being updated and changing as they're seeing who is being captured under those schemes and who is being left out. I was reading, actually, and there was a few letters that had been written to the Chancellor about re-advising or revising his scheme to be able to include dividends as well as salary for those with limited companies. Have you heard anything about that? Is that a possibility?
I have, and I think this is felt across the self-employed sector. A lot of small business lobby groups have actually approached the Chancellor of the government, for that matter, and made a big case about the self-employed, because it's not fair that those who are self-employed can claim self-employed income support scheme and continue working, whereas the directors of companies whose income is little over £50,000, they cannot claim. That's unfair. That's number one. And secondly, the fact that the dividend income, which is the bigger chunk of the income,
Yep,
is excluded from the claim, is equally felt unfair. And I think we hope to see some changes being announced by the government in coming days or weeks. It remains to be seen whether the government bows down to the pressure from lobby groups. But yes, you're quite right, actually, that it's unfair that those directors whose income is in dividends are excluded from this scheme, actually.
Salim, I have a question for you regarding company directors and businesses in the current status. Now, if, for example, we can't furlough, but because there's a stream of revenue coming in,
Okay.
and there's no other benefits available, what can we do? What can businesses do, or company directors do, to help their outgoings in terms of delaying on tax payments or claiming stuff under business? What can we do to, be more prudent around be more savvy is the word I'd like to, around what we can claim, what we can't claim, and how we can defer, say, huge chunky tax payments down the line until this is all over and we're running back up full steam again.
Okay, very good question. The government have announced time to pay scheme for businesses, whereby businesses can actually apply to HMR, Revenue and Customs, and negotiate with them a payment plan for the PAYE, for the VAT, for corporation tax, and also for individuals as well. So if you wanted to defer your payments, you can actually contact HM Revenue and Customs and agree your payment terms, revised payment terms. So this is quite helpful for those businesses who are struggling from very tight cash flow.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
The other thing is, if you had any sort of, if you were operating out of a premises, you can speak to your landlords and arrange, rent payment holiday. So you can sort of defer your rental payment instead of paying, your rent in advance for 3 months. You could negotiate with them and agree, okay, fine, you'll pay on a monthly basis, for argument's sake. That's one. If you, again, operating out of a premises, then you would be entitled to business rates relief, whereby you don't pay business rates for a year.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So Salim, while we're furloughing ourselves, I assume the company would continue to pay us our salary?
Yes. Yes, yes. But then you'll have to make sure that the company does apply to the grants as soon as the portal is available for use.
Okay.
You got to be very sort of, swift with that.
Yeah, and I seem to recall reading or maybe listening somewhere that we can actually furlough ourselves from the start date of March the 1st. Is that, if that is indeed when the business sort of stopped or needed the employee to stop?
I think the answer to that would be, when did your business stop trading?
Okay.
Okay. So if you still continued with your business activities until mid-March, for argument's sake, it'd be very difficult to justify your claim that you were furloughed from the 1st of March. That would be sort of, would be wrong.
Got it.
Simon, quick question. At the beginning of the year, there might have been a few people that actually became self-employed, and they would then miss the self-employment tax submission for January because they might have started after that. Would they be eligible for any of these grants or loans that are available?
Okay, so when did they become self-employed?
So they might have started in January 2020, for example.
Okay, so to be eligible for the self-employed income support scheme,
Yep.
The following is the criteria, basically. Your income has dropped, or you have lost your income because of COVID-19. You have submitted your income tax self-assessment tax return for the year 2018, 2019. You have traded in 2019, 2020. You are trading when you apply, or would be, except for COVID-19. Intend to continue to trade in the tax year 2020, 2021. You have lost your trading profits due to coronavirus. Your self-employed trading profits must also be less than £50,000, and more than half of your income should be from self-employment. Now, if somebody has started in January, okay, they might have sort of traded from January to March for 3 months. Okay, they will have to then submit the tax return as soon as possible. And the Inland Revenue will then use an average profit they allow you to process your claim. Actually, it's very difficult. Unfortunately, they are in a very difficult situation, because the key criteria announced by the government so far is that you must have submitted your self-employment tax return for the year 2018, 2019.
That's
and what
correct.
they have also done is, those who have missed the opportunity to submit the tax return, missed the deadline, they can actually submit their tax return for the year 2019 by the 23rd of April this year.
Right.
Without imposing any penalties.
Thank you.
It's been very helpful.
I'm sorry?
It's been very helpful.
No, the government has been very, very helpful. I must say that, actually. However, as I mentioned earlier, a group of people, a number of millions of people will fall through the cracks, unfortunately. And I think the government is looking into those people who have been affected very badly by this pandemic, and is trying to find a way to include those who have fallen through the cracks. The government is trying its level best. So far, they've been very helpful, no doubt. It is taking longer to process the claims, but once the HM Revenue and Customs are ready, I think it will provide breathing space. It will provide invaluable financial support to businesses, employees, and of course, the subcontractors and the self-employed individuals, actually. So it'd be incredible, actually. But it is taking time, no doubt about that. And I think a lot of businesses who do not have cash reserves will struggle, will come under a lot of financial stress. That is another reason why to contact the bank to apply for business interruption loan, to sort of ride out this sort of the next 3 to 6 months, and then come out of this this slowdown and manage your business going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ali.
Okay, I just would like to cover one particular point, is how much can a self-employed individual can claim from the government under the self-employment income support scheme. So they can actually get a taxable grant, which will be 80% of the average profits from the last 3 years. HMRC will use these average profits to calculate monthly amounts up to a maximum limit of £2,500. It is pretty much similar to the job retention scheme, where the threshold is the same, £2,500 per month.
So are you saying that we can apply for this given the fact that we are limited liability directors in addition to furloughing, or this doesn't?
No, this is just for the self-employed sector, actually.
This would be your sole traders, and so is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And again, for them, they do not need to sort of contact, HMRC will contact them and invite them to apply online. So very much like the portal for a job retention scheme for the employers, you apply online.
Okay.
So for the process, we have to wait till about the 20th, and hopefully by that, for this portal to open up, and hopefully by then they will have made some concessions or some reconsiderations around whether or not we include our salary and dividends, or just salary with respect to the furlough amount of 80%.
That's right. Yes, yes, yes. We hope for. I think I'm sure the government is looking into that, actually. So because a lot of up to 2 million self-employed individuals are falling through the cracks. Up to 2 million. It's a big number.
Yeah,
it's a very big number, and a lot of people are quite concerned about their the families. How are they going to survive? Any other concerns or questions that you might have?
Sorry, yeah, it's one final one. Something, you mentioned self-employment. Self-employed can get up to £2,500 per month. From what I've read, it is for those whose trading profit is less than £50,000.
That's right.
Is there anything available for those whose trading profit is over? I mean, there are some businesses out there that are sole traders that who have trading profit going to 60, 70,000 as well. So is there anything available for them? No?
Unfortunately, no, not for them.
Okay.
They have sort of capped it at £50,000 average profits over the past 3 years.